Ah yes, those dear little pudgy-winged babies that every grandma just wants to eat up.
And now I know how Joan of Arc felt. Now I know how Joan of Arc felt. As the flames rose to her Roman nose and her Walkman started to melt.
In the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their faces looked like this. Each of the 4 had the face of a human being, and on the right side each had the face of a lion, and on the left the face of an ox. Each also had the face of an eagle. Certainly these are no trumpet-blowing babies. I don't really have much to say other than, yeah, they look like this. But they have a strange feature that has led to a lot of speculation. I saw a wheel on the ground besides each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparkled like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved. And when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. Wherever the spirit would go, they would go. And the wheels would rise along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Now some propose that the wheels are their own spiritual being, which they call Ophanim, literally just Hebrew for wheels. Others posit that they are basically a body part that just isn't exactly physically connected. I think the answer lies in the subtle phrase, the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. I think this is actually an attempt to answer our question. They are different souls, but they share an animating life force. Please don't make me get into all the spirit lore in this video. Just take my word for it. We all have our own spirit, but according to this chapter, these guys shared one. Now, some of you may have a lingering question. Why do I insist on calling them super cherubim? They're just cherubim. Is that so? In Ezekiel 1, 4 living creatures are described to us. They each have 4 faces, a lion, a man, an eagle, and a bull. But in Ezekiel 10, we see them again. And they still have 4 heads, but this time it's a lion, a man, an eagle, and a cherub. So cherubim, whatever they are not the same as the living creatures. They are their own thing with the face of a bull. Turns out even the Talmud agrees. Those super cherubim, the 4 living creatures, are not cherubim. They just have cherubim heads. Cherubim themselves appear several times in the Bible. Iconically, one is given the job to guard Eden from the mortals. Later in the Psalms, we learn God actually rides one of these beasts. Unfortunately, we don't have much to go on, except that they have bull heads. Are they minotaurs? Are they just bulls? Are they winged bulls? We really can't say. We don't have a detailed description like we do for the supers. All we know is that they are God's holy bulls. And honestly, that's plenty sick enough. The word Arelim is only found in Isaiah 33:7. Behold, their brave men, Arelim, cry in the streets. The ambassadors of peace weep bitterly. At a first glance, this has nothing to do with angelic beings. But the word translated ambassadors is actually the word Malak, the same word typically translated as angels. When we read it this way, we notice a contrast between the brave men, that's the word Arelim, and the angels of peace. It makes sense to believe in the historic Jewish interpretation that this is a contrast between the warrior heavenly beings and the peaceful angels. In apocryphal writings, there's an angel Ariel, meaning Lion of God, and he is often seen as a lion-headed warrior angel. Some scholars believe that there is an etymological connection between this mysterious word Arelim that isn't really used anywhere else, and the lion-headed Ariel. If we accept that Arelim are connected to Ariel, several new biblical passages come into light. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant man from Kabzeel, performed great exploits. He struck down 2 Ariels of Moab. He also went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. What does this dude have against lions? I really don't know. In light of what we saw with the Arelim and Ariel, warrior, lion, angel of God, could it be that these 2 Ariels were some similar type of spirit being, perhaps demonic fallen Arelim? In summary, we don't really know what the word means, but the context mentions angels, and the ancient Jews thought it referred to warrior angels. There is also probably an etymological connection between the word and the apocryphal angel Ariel, and yet modern translators blatantly mistranslate the word Malakim to force a made-up meaning on the word Arelim, all to support their naturalistic bias. Turns out, bull cherubim aren't alone among the heavenly beings to be mashed up into the super cherubim.
Big mouth strikes again, and I've got no right to take my place to the human.
You've heard of the Watchers, right? They're probably among this group. These are angels proper, the messengers who look like humans and dress in white robes. They're the ones who appear to humans. Gabriel, you know him? He's one of these suckers. They look like shining men by all biblical accounts, and they usually function as the messengers to man. And they don't actually have wings! Wow, crazy, you must be some sort of PhD theologian. The point is, we know these guys. They are by far mentioned the most of any we have talked about. Most of the unspoken war is about the Watchers and how they relate to the Nephilim. And I'm just gonna have to leave that for another video, I'm sorry. But do note that the Malakim make up the human side of the super cherubs. So we have a bull, a lion, and a man. But where's the eagle? The name Cholim comes from the Hebrew word for eagle, and for the most part they're just implied by the fact that living creatures feature bulls, lions, humans, and eagles in both Ezekiel and Revelation. And since we have angels for the first 3, doesn't induction tell us the last head is also its own type of angel? But turns out they do appear. Once. As I watched, I heard an angel that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." Turns out that word, translated angel, is actually eagle. They mistranslated it in so many of the major translations because they just assumed it was a scribal error and meant to say angel. But if we already have an eagle-shaped hole in our angelology, well then, there we go.
Big mouth strikes again, and I've got no right to take my place with human.
Cherubim and Seraphim. We all know Seraphim, right? They're the... What exactly are Seraphim? Generally, Christian artwork portrays them somewhat like this dork. But actually, that's not what the Bible implies at all. Let's take a look at Numbers 21. We all know the story, right? Venomous snakes flood the camp. The golden serpent on the staff is used to deter them, right? We're all familiar. But the word for those snakes is seraphim. These snakes are the same dudes that are flying around God's throne later in Isaiah 6. They're described as having 6 wings and legs and hands. These aren't just your typical snake. And furthermore, the word seraph means burning. So they're the burning ones, described as snakes in Numbers, and 6-winged angels in Isaiah. Fiery, flying serpents. Believe it or not, there's actually lots of historical records for creatures just like these. Herodotus wrote that he went to Arabia to learn about the winged serpents. When I arrived there, I saw innumerable bones and backbones of serpents. Interestingly, he places them in the same general wilderness region as Isaiah's flying seraphim and the poisonous seraphim that attacked Israel. The place adjoins the plain of Egypt. Winged serpents are said to fly from Arabia at the beginning of spring, making for Egypt. He says that their wings are not feathered, but very like the wings of a bat, and concludes by connecting them in some way to the divine. I have now said enough about things that are sacred. The Assyrian king Esarhaddon wrote of a campaign he made, "Sure enough, to Egypt. There were two-headed serpents, but I trampled and marched on. In a journey of 2 days, there were green serpents whose wings were batting." The Egyptians were also aware of these creatures. They even honored them as divine. King Tut's throne is decorated by 2 lion heads as well as 2 winged serpents. And these serpents are often portrayed with legs, just like in Isaiah. Now, the flame does seem curiously absent from these accounts. Some have proposed that perhaps the burning in the word Seraphim refers to the pain of their poisonous bite. Or perhaps these are fallen seraphs stripped of fire, which, as we'll see next in the video, is also deeply connected with the divine. Have you ever heard of the Lahat Ha'Herapamithpakit? Almost certainly not, unless you're incredibly based and also a little crazy, and yet the term is found directly in a well-known Bible passage. After he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. We've all heard the orthodox interpretation. Obviously, there's a cherub with a sword and it's on fire and he's swinging it back and forth to prevent entry, just swinging it all day.
No, not this time. It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction. We made it up. We made this one up. It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication.
Let's look at a more literal translation of this verse. He drove out Adam and dwelt cherubim before the Garden of Eden with a flame of the whirling sword to guard the path to the tree of life. No longer do we have a cherubim with a flaming sword in his hand. This is a flame of the whirling sword, a Lahat Ha'Herapamithpakit. This is not a sword that is on fire. This is a fire that owns a sword. What is going on? Well, my dear theologian, these flames are our 7th class of heavenly beings. Yahweh made the winds his angels, and the flaming fire his servants. Fire is an ancient symbol of holiness, from the flaming seraphim to the burning bush, and the Holy Spirit's incarnation as tongues of flame at Pentecost. These all play off the same theme of divine fire. P.D. Miller Jr. points out that fiery beings as servants of God or the gods are very common in Canaanite, Phoenician, and Israelite mythology. One ancient Canaanite inscription reads, "A flame, 2 flames appear, in their right hands are sharpened swords." A similar Akkadian text describes a god, fire, that famous slayer, whose hands are suited to wield his horrible weapons and to make his fierce swords flash. The West Semitic god Resep, whose name means flame, was a god of pestilence, fertility, and war. He was known by the title Flame of the Arrow, arranged with precisely the same grammatical form as Lahat Ha'Herapamithpakit. The crazy thing is, he actually makes an appearance in Scripture. God's brightness was like the sunrise, rays flashed from his hand. Plague, Deber, went before him. Fire, Resep, followed his steps. As you can see, Resep forms a part of God's holy procession right along with Pestilence, who may be another heavenly being, or perhaps the angel of death performing his usual mass murder role. But the plural form Resepim is also found in ancient texts and possibly referenced in Job 5:7, suggesting that Resep is the chief deity in a group of flaming warrior spirits. Yahweh will come with fire. His chariots are like the whirlwind, to execute his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. Once again, the military of God is one of flame. In Jewish mythology, there are also these beings called Hashmalim, made of heavenly flame. The word Hashmal is used countless times in the Bible, actually, and it's usually translated a glow of amber or glowing metal. The Hashmal actually appears with the super cherubim in Ezekiel 1. Perhaps Jewish mythology is right. Perhaps these fire beings are also the same ones who took Elijah up to heaven in the chariots of fire. Regardless, the fiery spirits are all over the Bible and are undeniably our 7th angel. In Revelation 4, we meet 4 strange creatures called the living creatures, but they aren't quite the same as Ezekiel's super cherubim of the same name. Rather than having 4 heads, there are 4 of them, each with 1 head. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had the face of a man. And the fourth was like a flying eagle. It's still a lion, a bull, a man, and an eagle, but now they're covered with eyes and are split up and have 6 wings instead of 4. It may seem as though the tetramorph has been split and broken, But this is actually about unification. The major overtone of Revelation is the passing away of the old cosmic order and the unification of all things to God. Specifically, the Gentiles are no longer separate, but are all now part of God's kingdom. It appears these living creatures are the ultimate angelic culmination. The Arelim, the Malakim, the Cherubim, and the Cholim merge with the Ophanim to become covered with eyes. Secondly, they adopt the job of their Seraphim comrades. The call of Holy, holy, holy from Isaiah 6:3 only appears in the mouths of the Seraphim and the mouths of these living creatures. It is clear that we're meant to remember the Seraphim. These new creatures also have 6 wings. I also notice that though the lion, eagle, and ox fellows are described as like a lion, like an eagle, and like an ox, the humanoid dude is just said to have a face like a man. What's going on with the rest of his body then? Perhaps he's adopted a body of fire, thus uniting in these 4 beasts all 7 angels. Just as Seraphim, Ophanim, Cherubim, Arelim, Malakim, Cholim, Super Cherubim, and perhaps even Hashmalim all become unified in the form of these 4 living creatures, the world of purity above and the world of man will someday be unified as one, praising God together. In the new heavens and the new earth there is no sea. That is the crystal sea. The waters above, separating holiness from the rest of the cosmos, has been removed. The curtain of the tabernacle represented the very same crystal sea, and at Christ's death, it was torn in two. We can now come to God and be with Him and all the angels forever in eternity.